What is up, bosses? Before we start this episode, I want to tell you about our sponsor this week. It is Common Stock, a social network for smart money investors. Does anyone else out there feel like capital markets make 0 sense these days? From equities and options to meme stocks, crypto, and NFTs, markets are changing at breakneck speed. It's more important than ever to find trustworthy information from people who actually know what they're talking about. Common Stock built a platform to showcase the portfolio, real-time trades, and analysis of the smartest retail investors. It lets people link their existing brokers to verify their portfolios and performance, which helps you distinguish signal from noise. I'm going to tell you so much more about Common Stock during the break in the show. Plus, I'll let you know how you can follow Sam, Johnny, and myself right on Common Stock to get real-time trades. But if you want to check it out right now, all you got to do is go to commonstock.com. That's commonstock.com to join today. All right, let's get started with this week's episode.
Welcome to the Invest Like a Boss podcast.
I'm Sam Marks.
And I'm Johnny FD. We're self-made entrepreneurs who invest our own money and use modern technology to invest like a boss.
Join us each week for exclusive interviews with our network of modern investors, business owners, and multimillionaires to discover new ways to invest our hard-earned cash.
Hey bosses, this is Johnny and welcome to episode 217 of the Invest Like a Boss podcast. Derek, how the heck are you, buddy?
I am doing great. I think the listeners want to know how you're doing, Johnny. I'm here in LA. It's 75. It's sunny. There's really nothing to complain about. What's the status in Kiev?
Depends on which news channel you watch, but it's minus 2 degrees. And according to every American news channel, Russia is invading us any second now.
Yeah, I don't know what to believe. So I feel like I got an inside man in you. So any updates you have for us, we're obviously, looking out for you. And, if there's anything shady, I got a twin blow up mattress available for you in Venice Beach.
Oh, great. Yeah. Just as I finished my apartment, now I have now I have 3 actual queen size beds. I have my main one in my room. I have a guest bed. It's like a double, but longer. And then I have a couch that pulls out to be a queen size. And now this happens,
Isn't that wild how life works? You went from like hostels to Airbnbs to some like not ideal places. And now you got like your perfect setup and this happens.
Yeah. But at the same time, like nothing's actually happened. Who knows what's going to happen, right? But I think the chances are very slim. But I would say this, if I didn't own property, if I didn't go through all this trouble of, getting the place done, I would have just went somewhere else, because I wouldn't have been invested here. I think I was at a point in my life where I actually needed to settle down and establish like a home. But in terms of, investment wise, it's way easier just to, be not, location dependent. And that's why I preached it for so many years.
Yeah, I agree. I don't own any property myself. If stuff went down in Los Angeles, I like it here, but it wouldn't be that hard to just move on somewhere else. So I can definitely see where you're coming from with that, where it really ties you down to a place and you want to protect it essentially.
Yeah, definitely. So, yep, that's the stage Johnny FD's in right now. But so far, everything's fine. And I think the chances of something coming to Kiev are very small. I wouldn't worry about it.
All right, let's hope it stays that way. This episode, a little bit different. We kind of want to get back into some more fun guests. I guess we've gotten into some topics recently that are a little deeper or maybe not as much fun. But also the reason I brought our guest on today, her name is Codie Sanchez, is that Johnny, as much as we tried to diversify our guests, it almost always ends up being a male guest. It's really hard to find female guests in the finance space.
Yeah, I can see that. I mean, I think, like just by numbers, there's just way more dudes in finance. So, it's not like we don't try to find good female guests, but the ones that, either like emailed us to be on the show or people, or we came across, like some of them just weren't very good. And we're like, you know what, we wouldn't have them on the show if they were male. Like, why would we have them on just because they're female? So what I like about Codie is she's someone who we would have on regardless of her ethnicity or her gender.
Yeah, 100% agree. I've been following her for a while now, and she puts out these awesome videos, especially on Instagram. I see her a lot. Just kind of motivational, kind of hustle videos about all this stuff she's involved in. And she's actually friends with a previous guest we had on. Let me look up his episode number. It wasn't too long ago. It was Justin Donald, who Sam interviewed for episode 204, The Lifestyle Investor. She mentions him a lot. And she's just doing a little bit of everything. She's got a really interesting backstory. She's a total hustler. And when I asked in Patreon, who should we have on the show? We need some strong female guests. It was instantly Codie Sanchez. And then like 5 other people seconded that. They're like second, third, fourth, fifth. And a lot of you guys were excited for this. We put questions in the Patreon. If you're not aware, if you're a member of our ILAB Patreon, you get the ability to ask questions to our guests, and I will do so in this interview. So a lot of people are really excited about this, and I am as well.
Yeah, that is awesome. And if you guys enjoy this episode, do us a favor and share it on your Twitter or your Instagram, and then tag both Codie Sanchez as well as Invest Like a Boss. That way she can see that, people are listening, and then hopefully we can get some more, awesome guests on the show.
All right. Well, with that said, why don't we jump right into it? You want to bring it in, Johnny?
Yeah. So without further ado, go ahead and take a listen to Derek and Codie Sanchez.
This week's episode of Invest Like a Boss is brought to you by Common Stock. Common Stock is the home of smart money. They are the social network for smart money investors. Now, I teased it at the top of the show. You can follow all 3 of us here from Invest Like a Boss on Common Stock. We set up accounts, super easy. So sign up for your free account, and then you can follow Sam at Sam Marks. You can follow Johnny at Johnny FD ILAB, or you can follow me, Derek, at Derek ILAB. All 3 of us have linked accounts so you can get access to real-time trades, see portions of our portfolio, and also you can get tons of investment ideas from verified top investors on Common Stock. You can see what's trending and find everything from YOLO trade advice to long-term investment insights. Think of it as a Bloomberg terminal for Main Street, and they cover everything. I'm talking equities, options, cryptos, and NFTs. You can find trusted, transparent, quality insights so you can participate and benefit from the markets. Common Stock is not a brokerage. They are just able to link your accounts, and they are not involved in the buying or selling process. So you don't have to worry about any of that stuff. And like I said, it's totally free. No subscriptions, no paywalls, nothing. So sign up for your free account at commonstock.com. One more time, that's commonstock.com. All right, let's get back to the show. Back here on Invest Like a Boss, our guest this week is someone that I'm really excited about, and I know a lot of our bosses out there are really excited about too, because she was requested by so many people. I said, hey, you know what? Invest Like a Boss has been all dudes all the time. It's like dude city. So we need a cool female who's into investing and hustling. And who is it? And the first person that came up, and multiple people reiterated it, was Codie Sanchez, who I have on the show right now. Codie, thank you so much for being on Invest Like a Boss.
I'm thrilled. Thanks for having me on.
Can you just kind of take us back to the start for people who aren't familiar with you? I read your bio a little bit. I've been following you on social for a while. I know where you are today. I guess I don't know a lot of your backstory. I see that you were a journalist, you were investing, you worked for Vanguard. I definitely want to talk about that. Can you kind of give us some of the highlights, I guess, of your career up until now?
Yeah, sure. So, basically, I think I started like a lot of people do in finance, where, I was trying to find my way a little bit. I was a journalist. I was in human trafficking and drug smuggling, actually, of all things. And I used to cover border conflict issues. And I did that actually when I graduated early from college for quite a bit. And then I sort of realized that I didn't want to just write the news, and I wanted to make some actual change. And at that point, I realized that the only difference between me, my last name Sanchez, and a lot of the people that I was writing about whose last name was also Sanchez, was that I had a different socioeconomic status. Just being born in the US, even to a middle-class family, I had sort of a different opportunity that most people don't have. And so anyway, I basically took that opportunity and climbed my way through a bunch of financial firms, and eventually, did the whole Goldman Sachs Wall Street thing, built up a bunch of asset management firms, one in cannabis and private equity, one in Latin America, and kept doing that until I finally had my own firm. And so, I like to think of it a little bit like real estate, right? Like you buy your first, house, let's say. And when you buy your first house in real estate, you might buy a studio apartment, right? And then after the studio apartment, you might go and buy a 1-bedroom, and then a 2-bedroom, and then you might buy a townhouse, and then you might buy an actual house, and then you might buy a multifamily. So I kind of did the same thing in finance. I started out where everybody does, sort of at the bottom, climbing my way as a little analyst, until finally I was leading a division. And then finally I was leading a company. And then finally I had my own company. And then finally I started doing all my own deals. And that sort of stair step is what led me to where we're at today.
Awesome. I really like the analogy of your career to real estate. So I don't know how I forgot to bring this up, but your team had mentioned, you said you were a journalist covering border issues. Just to get on a little aside, your team had mentioned that you, I guess this is okay to talk about, that you have illegally crossed the border multiple times. How does that work? Is it easy? Is it difficult? Is there certain routes to take? I don't want to dox you, I guess, but can you kind of go over that really quick on an aside? It's really interesting.
Yeah, sure. So I was a journalist, what we call an investigative journalist. So I was writing stories about human trafficking and human smuggling, and sort of the most difficult things that happen to us as human beings. And in this one particular story, I was covering this guy whose name was Neftali Fuentes. And Neftali had crossed the border, I don't even know, 100 and something times illegally, trying to get into the US where his family was. And he was a young kid, 15, 16 years old. And so I followed him around for a few weeks. And basically, one of the times he had an opportunity to cross illegally with a coyote. And so I was a journalist and covered what that experience was like, from the, getting picked up early in the morning in the dark in a pickup truck, to getting dropped off at a remote location, to having to cross across some hills and more mountainous regions, to the caches they have where they hold water and food supplies in the desert. And so getting that experience, I think, was pretty incredible to see what a human goes through in order to chase their dreams. And it also made me realize, what is our excuse? We don't really have one. If Neftali Fuentes can cross the border illegally hundreds of times, traverse all of these miles in order to get to the US, what's my excuse to not get up a half hour or an hour earlier to get what the fuck I want out of life? I don't really have one.
That is a fantastic point. And if that story is available anywhere online, I definitely appreciate getting it, and we'll share it with all our bosses, because I'd really like to see the experience of that. So going from one extreme to the other, I guess you could say, as exciting as that was, or heartbreaking as that was, or at least a somewhat of an adrenaline rush of doing that, you go to work at somewhere like Vanguard, which we talk about all the time on the show. But honestly, if I said I worked for Vanguard, it doesn't sound that exciting. I don't know, maybe you could tell us different, but and also I want to hear that, since you worked at Vanguard, if there's any other products that maybe you recommend since then, or Vanguard is still kind of the gold standard, because, we're all about low fees.
Got it. That makes a lot of sense. Well, first of all, obviously, I don't ever recommend any financial product. So you got to do what I call, instead of BYOB, DYOD, do your own due diligence. But, Vanguard was a great place to learn. How I think about these big firms is they're like a free MBA. They actually pay you to train you. And Vanguard spends tens of thousands of dollars on new people who come into their company to train for a series of licenses. So I have licenses like the 7, 63, 6, 24, which are required in order for you to do financial trading, securities, sales, investment banking, et cetera. And then simultaneously, they spend all of this money teaching you how to run their business, how to be a leader. They have what was called Vanguard University at the time. So it was incredible for me. However, I think my dreams went to die a sad and lonely death at Vanguard, because they're very conformist, right? Like they want everything done what's called the Vanguard way. And that's awesome for them. It just doesn't work for me. And so, they want this sort of unilateral, one type, one box kind of human. And I am completely and utterly uninterested in that. And so that was something that wasn't a long lasting period for me. The products, they're low cost index products. If you're looking for low cost index products, yeah, they're some of the best out there due to the way that they structure them, in my humble opinion. But I don't usually invest in low cost index products as the majority of my investments today.
Sounds good. And you know what? You and I can totally relate to not conforming to large corporate policies, because that's kind of how I ended up where I am today. And speaking of not conforming, that leads you to the cannabis industry. How does that happen?
So, yeah, right. So naturally, every young, girl and boy wants to grow up and be a cannabis financier, I guess. That was not exactly the case for me. I didn't grow up really knowing much about cannabis at all. And I probably didn't call it cannabis. I probably called it weed back in the day. Sure. But I got into that industry because I'm always looking for something in particular. I am looking for my unfair advantage, where there's two things. Something where the narrative is disconnected from the numbers. And so in cannabis, there's a lot of stigma. People don't like the industry. They think it's bad. And that was a big disconnect from the amount of money that people were spending on the industry. People have used cannabis for millennia and they like it. They're not going to go anywhere. And so this industry was only getting bigger, was only commercializing more and more. And yet the mainstream had said, no, we don't like this. And so that to me is the opportunity of a lifetime. You're always looking for, where do the narratives and numbers not meet? And then how can I get in between to do a natural arbitrage on the opportunity set? And usually these things only last for a period of time. So you got to jump on it.
That totally makes sense. I'm personally very rarely use cannabis. You don't want to see me high, but I do live in Venice Beach, California. So I feel like I have a contact high anytime I walk outside of my home. But yeah. Can you kind of give us a summarization of how the cannabis industry looks today? I know a few years ago, states were passing it. Let's say, I guess, maybe around 2015, 2016, it was super hot. All these states started passing it. And I feel like it's slowed down since. And especially when you look at individual cannabis stocks and how they've underperformed the market, what's kind of the state of cannabis today, I guess? Is the hype calmed down a lot?
So cannabis sort of had its 99 internet bubble era in the public stock markets. And that happened a few years back when I was in the industry. Everything was at all-time highs. People were more excited than ever about this new green revolution. And then, like anything does that's based on hype and not actual profits, the industry had a massive pullback. And the industry hasn't really recovered fully from that. The industry is still trading at a devaluation or a decreased multiple to actual revenue or profits compared to any other industry. And so I would still say it's in sort of the bottom trough, and probably will take some more aggressive legalization measures to change that. I'm very bullish long-term on cannabis, but in short term, the equity markets have been relatively tough. And you've seen that kind of across the board.
I want to jump into another topic. The reason I think a lot of people wanted to hear from you, and it actually inspired me to start following you too, is you have awesome social media content. You have these great videos that I see, at least Instagram, and I think I follow you on Twitter as well. Just these great short little videos that even if you don't take the advice to heart, it really motivates you to be like, yeah, I can do that, or I can do something similar to that. So thank you for that, first of all. And then I also have a question that it has to be a huge time commitment, because I know one of the guys on our show has a pretty popular YouTube channel, but it takes up like almost all of his time just to do that. So how do you have time to really make all this social content and focus on your businesses and investments at the same time? And has it helped or kind of hindered your investment strategy when you're, on a social media and in the public eye?
Sure. So, I think if you're going to run multiple businesses, which is what I do, the only way that is sustainable is for you to have a holdco structure with what I call decentralized leadership. And so Warren Buffett, for instance, he manages a team of 280,000 employees, right? And he does this with a centralized team that's located in Omaha of 25 people that really haven't changed over the many decades that he's ran Berkshire Hathaway. And so if he tried to insert himself into all of the underlying subsidies that he has an interest in, yeah, that guy would be really miserable. But instead, he gets to spend 6 hours a day reading his newspaper, sipping his Coke, eating his cheeseburger, because he knows how to do decentralized leadership, which basically essentially means that you hire great people who you incentivize correctly, track properly in order to run businesses, and then you get out of the way. There's a really famous quote by one of his partners, and I always forget who said, when we get a dog, we don't try to do the barking for it. And so that is one of the key tenets that we do. Then the other thing that I think is really important is when I think about having multiple entities or businesses, it's really all about how does your reporting structure work? Can you be the type of leader that is able to put together a scorecard with KPIs, key performance indicators, that basically give you the state of the union, the what's up with the business in, let's say, 60 seconds? And then can you do one that you can do a deep dive within 20 or 30 minutes for each business? It's hard to do up front, but you put all the short-term pain up front so that you can have long-term gain. And that's how you're able to manage 10, 20, 30 businesses. Am I perfect at it? No, absolutely not. Do I fail sometimes? 100%. But that is how I do sort of the overarching leadership and management of multiple holdcos. And then, lastly, are social media, and does it take away from my deal making? I think you have to follow what you're really interested in and curious about at different points of your life. I mean, I've ran asset management businesses and investment businesses for, 13, 14, 15 years now. And so I was ready for a change. I know how to do deals. I've done deals forever, but I wanted to switch it up. I wanted to see what would it be like to try to synthesize down my ideas and explain them in simple terms to many people. And social media is an incredible amplifier to whatever you're doing. So today, I'm more interested in connecting with people and meeting interesting humans, in solidifying my philosophy and ideas, than I am in purely making money on deals. If all I wanted to do was maximize for money earned, I'd just go do a ton of deals. I'd be doing deals all day, every day. But I've done it for 15 years. So I think it really benefits from you having multiple careers throughout your lifetime. And this new one, this online weirdness that we do, I'm really enjoying right now.
That's great. I really enjoy the content as well. I think, speaking of keeping it simple, I really appreciate that fact. And I think a lot of people out there can relate to that as well. I think you just posted recently, I was looking right before we talked, that you had said, if you have a business idea and you're worried about if it'll work or not, go talk to your grandma and explain it to her. And if she understands it, it's probably a deal you should pursue. And if she doesn't, then you should probably walk away. So I really like the kind of keep it simple idea.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, the grandma thing is more about, you can have a very complex business idea, but if you cannot explain your idea in very simplistic, non-acronistic, like no acronyms, no industry-specific jargon or speak, to somebody who knows nothing about it, then I think you've reached a level where you can call yourself a little bit of an expert on the subject matter. What I think a lot of people do is they learn just enough to be dangerous. They reiterate a bunch of buzzwords to people, and then that ends up becoming really dangerous because they don't actually know what they're doing.
Oh, nothing drives me more crazy than someone throwing a bunch of acronyms at me, and then I'm like, wait, what are you talking about? So,
yes.
I alluded to it earlier, but historically, the world of finance and investments, it's been a man's world, and it's still very imbalanced. I've had a lot of challenges just booking female guests on this show for certain topics. And can you kind of just speak to that, about what challenges you face or even advantages that it's given you being a female in this space?
Yeah, listen, I mean, being a female in finance is its own thing. And, when I was working on trading floors, there was many a weird moment. I've definitely had ass grabs. I've definitely had inappropriate conversations. I've definitely had MDs or managing directors do things that I think are wildly out of line. But the truth of it is I think all of those struggles and difficulties form you to be stronger. You can either learn to break from those things or you can learn to break free. And I think that every struggle you have have is just testing your resolve. Are you willing to stand up to the person and say, hey man, totally inappropriate. Don't do that again. Anyway, let's talk about this deal. And do we create strong daughters and women who are able to stand up for themselves and others? I don't need anybody else protecting me. And I don't think others do either. They just have to learn how to find their own voice. And, I was lucky because my parents taught me that very young. I was handling a gun at a young age with my father. I was out hunting. I saw life or death. And so when some idiot came and said something stupid to me, I knew I wasn't going to die. I was pretty frank and saying, hey man, knock it off. And 9 times out of 10, what happens when you do that is more respect is had. And so, most of my best mentors have been men, actually, and there's been plenty of crappy ones. But I would say also, I was at one firm and I had built up a pretty big business, and I knew that I wouldn't be able to progress very far at that firm because they did have this sort of boys club culture. Everybody was a golfer. I wasn't. Everybody was a big drinker. I wasn't. Everybody was into partying and all this stuff that I wasn't. And they liked to do it with all guys. I was the only female who was senior at the firm, and I can hang, but I started asking myself, do I want to? If my work and what I am doing is as valuable as I think it is, why am I building these guys' castle? Why don't I go build my own, or somebody who has the same ethics and morals that I do? Doesn't mean that theirs are wrong. They're just not for me. So at some point I sat down with the CEO and I said, I think this is wrong. I think this is quasi criminal. I think these guys are idiots. I don't like how you run it this way. And when he sort of started to disagree with me on it, I said, hey man, not my circus, not my monkeys. This is your business. If you want to run it this way, I think that's awesome. It's just obviously I got to go do this somewhere else, because I'm not going to put on my tombstone that I was a, MD at this firm that did this stuff. So I'm out of here. And in this world, more than ever, your labor is so powerful. If you don't align with where you are, get out of there, because there are so many incredible businesses that want people who are just like you. You do not have to conform to anybody else, female, male, black, white, gay, straight, or otherwise.
I think that's a great point. It definitely, surround yourself with people that have the same values as you. So all that's great. I have nothing to disagree with on that. I do want to get into the meat of the episode, which I'm mostly excited about. So you bring up a lot of these businesses on your socials that we alluded to earlier. And you're into boring businesses, which I think is cool too. So I think this show has been brought up before in the past. Blue collar millionaires, there's people that are pouring concrete or moving junk out of your house. They're making millions. It's just crazy businesses that you would never think about because maybe they're not the most glamorous. But can we kind of go over maybe, let's say, your top 5 side hustles that anyone could basically start right now to bring in some extra income?
So I'm going to do that, but first I'm going to push back. First, I would say most people want you to tell them the industry or the type of business or the specific area that they should go work at. And you're asking the wrong question, not you, but you people. Yep. The play is not, here's the industry that I think you should do. Why? Because at any point in time, that could completely change. It could pivot so incredibly quickly. Instead, you've got to learn to think in frameworks. So I don't ever, when I go and invest in a business and I'm going to go do a side hustle or I'm going to go start a new business, I'm never thinking only industry specific. I am thinking this industry has something unique that's happening in this moment. I have some skill set that is aligned to this specific moment, and I'm going to go double click on that opportunity for as long as those two things exist. And the second that those two things don't exist anymore, that arbitrage opportunity is gone, I'm going to move on. And most people won't get this. And they'll be like, but tell me, should I buy a car wash or should I buy a laundromat? I'm like, God, no. What you should do is you should look at yourself, and then you should look at your interests, and then you should look at what you're good at. And you should say, where can I apply those 3 things that, in my opinion, is something that's an industry that is boring, that is unsexy, that is underutilized, maybe underpaid attention to, undervalued, and get after it. I mean, I have a friend who has a crochet business, and this crochet business, he is like a 28-year-old, good-looking Brit, kind of a party guy, and he runs a crochet needle business that does $5 million a year.
There was just a commercial that aired the other day that was kind of like joking about this same concept, that a guy had got really into crochet and it started selling it everywhere. So it's kind of funny you bring that up. It reminds me of this commercial I saw the other day.
Yeah, that's a real business. And this guy crushes it. And now he doesn't even work in the business because he's done what I've done, which is decentralized leadership and SOPs. So start looking for rhymes and reasons, not particular industries, would be sort of what I would tell you. But if people want to like play around with some ideas, I mean, some of the easy ones that I talk about a lot are like passive income, laundromats, car washes, vending machine routes, ATM routes, these businesses that have, ice vending machines, these businesses that do the work for you to some degree. And I think those are fun places to start.
So you talked about, getting in, where you see an opportunity and then getting out when that opportunity is over. Have you had problems? Have you noticed that people have had problems getting out? Maybe they stuck to their guns and said, I'm going to make this work no matter what, and not seeing that, the opportunity had already passed and hadn't got out. Is that something that happens fairly often?
Yeah, I think, these trades that I start, the businesses that I invest in, they tend to be pretty long-term. Like, a car wash, for instance, a lot of your money is made on the deal purchase. So like, what do you buy in at? And you buy into a strong business that has a balance sheet that can continue for a long time. Now, when I say get out of the business, that might mean that, you could sell it at a 6 or 7 or 10x valuation. So that's like a perfect time to get out of the business. But when we're talking about get out, we're talking about typically years. We're not talking about day trading in 30 or 60 seconds or a couple week period or a couple month period. So you have some time to play around with, I think, is the difference here. So no, I wouldn't say too many people hold on too long. The bigger issue, I think, is people try to turn dreams into profits. And like, if you're running a crochet business, it needs to be a profitable business because it's not going to be the next YouTube. And so focus on continual cash flow and profitability as opposed to, no, I'm going to dominate market share and I'm going to have a huge burn to do that for a period. No, it doesn't work that way.
That makes sense. So these side hustles are great, and you said they are passive income, mostly passive. What about like truly passive income? I know you said that you're not really into low cost index funds. And are you personally invested in anything specifically in the market where you don't have to own a business or do a startup or any kind of deal like that? Is there anything that you're really into on that front? Because if you said you don't like index funds, I'm just curious of if you're invested in anything else in the market.
So it's not that I don't like index funds. It's just the more wealth you create and the more unfair access you get to deals, the less likely that you are to take retail deals and prices. And so, like, for instance, if you were to go out right now and get a Vanguard index fund, that price for that Vanguard index fund for anybody is going to be pretty much the same, except if you are a business that has $100 million that they're going to allocate to it, they'll get a better price, right? And so the same thing happens for you when you have a little bit of wealth you've accumulated and you've learned to get into these deals. Eventually, you don't want to pay market. You want to sail on everything. You always want an unfair advantage or access. So that's what I mean by that is I'm going to shoot for that as often as possible, especially in a market like this where, public equities are at all-time highs. And I think there's a lot of volatility that's not priced in. So I do have equity exposure. It's typically going to be more like single stocks, or it'll be hedge funds that I can get into, long private equity. It'll be maybe some different types of leveraged loans, fixed income, things like that. So yeah, I certainly have some of that. And then truly passive income, I invest in a lot of private deals and funds. So, I might not always go buy the laundromat. I might invest in a fund that does roll-ups, or I might invest in a private equity fund, or I might invest in a multifamily real estate fund so I don't have to manage the underlying assets. But certainly there's stocks and bonds in my portfolio too, for sure. And there's some dividend growers and stuff that would cash flow.
Do you mind if we talk some questions from our Patreon members? I know we had some people excited to ask you a few questions. So this is stuff I can't totally answer to, but David Bell wants to kind of dig deeper into your cannabis business. He asks, let me see, we already covered some of this. How about this one? What is the product line focus of your 40 plus companies in Cresco Capital Partners invested in? What's driving growth? I think specifically they're looking at products like capsules, concentrates, edibles, or any other kind of products that you see are kind of taking off in the cannabis industry.
Sure. I mean, in that portfolio, it was cross industry. So it's not even just product specific. It was every single sector and vertical in the industry. So you might have grows, which are just the, actual cannabis flower in a big farm. We had exposure to manufacturers. Those are the people that would turn it into products like pre-rolls, edibles, drinks, etc. We had distributors, those are people that are going to take the product and get it to a bunch of different stores. We had retail, those are the actual stores. We had marketing, firms and media companies in the space. So we were product agnostic and sector agnostic because the industry was so early. We wanted to be able to invest in it all. I mean, some of the things that I think are just fun in the industry that I really like is like we invested in a company called Can, which is my favorite cannabis beverage. That is a microdose THC sparkling water with very little sugar and organic, no additives. And that company's really cool. They're going like crazy. That's fun to watch. We invested in basically, all of it.
I've seen those drinks and they're really interesting. I haven't tried them yet. I feel like I still have the stigma of the cannabis thing. Not that it's like ethically bad, just that I guess it doesn't work for me. I don't know.
Yeah, totally. Well, I don't think, to your point, I think that cannabis has good and bad characteristics. I'm not an activist or irrational thinking that cannabis is some, panacea that cures everything. I don't think that's true at all. I think you can misuse it. I think you can overuse it. I think there can be things wrong with the industry, very similar to alcohol for sure. And I think, hell, we can become addicted to coffee. I don't see why we can't become addicted to this. And so, I think you got to be really careful in any industry like this. And that's why I think it should be legalized, because we should be having oversight and proper regulation on it. Nor do I think that everybody should use it. There's a lot of use cases for non-psychoactive cannabis, like hemp. I was just drinking a latte today that had hemp milk in it. That's great. I have curtains that I'm looking at right now that are made of hemp that are hanging on my wall. So, the plant is so cheap to grow, which is why it was called weed. And you can be used for so many different purposes, from, actually cleaning up the soil because it has these long roots that pull out toxins from the soil. And then, it can be actually used to bioremediate, toxic soil. So there's lots of different ways to use it, but I'm not out there saying, yeah, everybody should use cannabis. Far, far from it. I am just kind of a true libertarian at heart and think you should be able to decide as an adult, and the government should regulate and tax as opposed to outlaw.
Yeah, that's a great perspective on it. Another question within that space, they're asking, are these companies that you're invested in mainly focused on long-term growth, or are a lot of them preparing to be acquired?
I would say it's a mix in the portfolios. The play in cannabis is definitely, it's a growth story. And so whether that growth gets you to an IPO or whether that growth gets you acquired by a strategic, I think most people don't care. They just want one of the two. But I do think the real play will happen with consolidation in the industry and a bunch of public offerings. And I think that's a win, not an if.
Totally. And last one on the cannabis industry is, do you envision a day where there is an international dominant cannabis company, a la an Anheuser-Busch or InBev, like there is in the alcohol industry? And if so, is there any standouts that you see that could maybe get to that point?
Yeah, I absolutely think so. I mean, I think there will be one. It'll be very similar to a mix of alcohol, CPG, pharma, retail, distribution. So all the things that are needed to service those other industries will be needed in cannabis too. I think you will have manufacturers that are product leaders, that are market leaders. I think you'll have retail brands that are too. And, are there some of them that already stand out to me? Yeah, I mean, I think Can will be one of the drink standouts for sure. I think there's a bunch of big companies that are what are called MSOs, multi-state operators, that one of them, or multiple of them, I should say, will win that play. Do I know which ones in particular? No, but I think that's why you invest in a fund structure first. You want to have diversification across the whole asset class, not bet on just one or two companies.
That's awesome. I'm really excited to see where the cannabis industry goes, and hopefully all legal throughout all 50 U.S. states soon. Let's move on to Aris. He asks, here we go. How has being Hispanic helped you in your field? Aris says he asked because he's also Hispanic and last name is Sanchez. So there you go.
I don't know if it's helped me. I don't really play into the racial politics or profiling or differentiation of humans game that I think is increasingly happening in the world. So I happen to be a woman. I happen to be Latina. I think those two things are awesome. I celebrate being both of them. And simultaneously, I don't pay much attention to it. So I think, at the end of the day, what you want to be is a competent human. That's how I'd like to be categorized. I want to be competent. I want to be compassionate. And I want to be creative in what I do. And if I can do those three things, I'd rather somebody listed those as, what they think of with Codie than Hispanic woman or otherwise.
I love it. So how about a fun question before we get out of here? One more from Patreon. What is Codie's spiritual or morning routine? Is there anything you have to do every morning other than drink your hemp latte?
Usually in the morning, I drink a black half-calf coffee. It's actually my favorite coffee is from this store in North Carolina, Wilmington, called Casablanca Coffee. I get a little jittery on too much coffee, so this one's decreased caffeine. So I usually have that with some ghee and coconut oil. I skip the lattes typically. And I have a good friend of mine, Hal Elrod. He came up with something called Miracle Morning. And so when I get up in the morning, I try to, read 10 pages of a book right away or a little bit more. I do a little bit of meditation. I get some movement in, a handstand, some push-ups, whatever. I drink a full thing of water and then I have my coffee and get to work. But whatever, I'm human. Sometimes I end up just watching some social media but I do think it's important that you try to limit that, especially early in the morning.
Or just hop on a random interview with a podcast. I definitely appreciate the time. Before we get out of here, can you tell listeners where they should go to learn more about you and Contrarian Thinking, which we should have brought up earlier. Your site is contrarianthinking.co. That's .co. We also have a special deal here that I was told from your team. If you want to join Contrarian Cashflow, you'll get 20% off the first year's membership. Just use code InvestBossCT. That's InvestBossCT. And I'll put all those links in the show notes. Codie, where else should we go to learn about you?
I think that's it. Yeah, go to contrarianthinking.co, and then we're big on all the socials. And my name's Codie Sanchez, Codie, and then Sanchez.
Thank you so much, Codie. I feel like we just scratched the surface. We might have to have you on back soon and maybe I'll jump in some of these side hustles you keep promoting and see how that goes.
Love it. Love it. Well, thanks for having me. You made this easy, man.
Definitely. Thanks for coming on Invest Like a Boss.
$17,000 by removing a pool, buying land for only $10K and making $1,500 a month from it. $7K a month with picnics. What do you think I'm reading all this from?
This sounds like you logged into my YouTube and you're reading half of my feed.
Yeah, actually, this is Codie Sanchez's Instagram, and it's super inspiring. I mean, obviously, like a lot of the titles are kind of like, whoa, what is this? But then, when you look into it more, you're like, okay, actually, some of these, are actually cool side hustles, right? Like ice vending machine business. I actually know a guy. I met him in Thailand, and he owned a bunch of them. Somewhere in the Midwest. And it was like literal passive income. He would have someone go pick up the coins, fix it once in a while. And it was like a legitimate business. I knew someone else who had laundromats, and then one guy who had an automatic car wash. I think these are all businesses she's talked about. Yeah,
this is all stuff that I think sounds really cool to do. Like I thought of the vending machine thing. I was like, a laundromat would be easy. And then I'm just like, do I really want to do all this? And I don't know how passive it really is, because it's still dealing with a lot of stuff that I don't want to deal with. Whereas, when we're just investing in the market, that's truly passive to me.
Yeah. I mean, the word passive income, I'm famous for talking about for like years and years, but I knew it wasn't truly passive. I just kind of, like, in my mind, passive income was, I'm in Thailand. I'm in a different time zone than the US. I want to be able to go to sleep and then wake up with new sales. I want to be able to do it from anywhere. I want to be able to take a few days, and not check my email and still earn money. I knew it wasn't going to be 100% hands off. I don't think anything really is, except for, ironically, index funds and other kind of online investments. Making money and investments really is the only thing that's truly passive. Everything else is, kind of semi-passive, or at least, kind of cool side businesses.
Yeah. What did you think about her background? I mean, she went from being a news reporter dealing with border issues with the US and Mexico to working at Vanguard and then jumping in the cannabis industry. And now she's buying car washes, laundromats, and, and Codie's still really young. She's our age, around our age. And she's done like 5 different careers already.
Yeah, it's a lot, and I could see like her having a knack for, what she's doing now. Honestly, I'm tired from it. Like I'm exhausted. Like I used to, it's funny that you mentioned in the interview that I was kind of, I had a different like business acumen than you. But actually, I was like the biggest hustler ever. Like I had so many side businesses going on. Like I would in Thailand, I was buying and flipping motorcycles. I had a chia seed business where I was selling like health food products on the side. I had like all these different online businesses. I was selling ebooks. I had, literally like 14 streams of income at one point, and I just got burnt out. And I was like, what? I'm done with this. It's just too much.
I think I'm at that point right now. And Johnny, how are we over 200 episodes in? I've known you for over 2 years now, and I've never heard about this motorcycle flipping business. I love motorcycles. Tell me more, please.
Yeah, well, they weren't the cool motorcycles that you like. They were like scooters, they're like 125 cc scooters.
So you just find them and flip them for a higher price right away?
No, it was more like, honestly, because I was traveling a lot. So I would go, I would like live in, let's say, Koh Tao, one of the islands, for 3 to 6 months, and then I would like live in Chiang Mai for 6 months. Then I'll be in the other side of the country, like Phuket or something. And instead of renting the bikes for, I think like $300-400 a month, I realized I could just find a good deal on a used one. Buy it and then sell it for more after 3 months when I leave.
Yeah, so you got free transportation. That's actually a brilliant idea.
Yeah, and if I saw a good deal, and there was like two of them, or maybe even sometimes 3, that I was like, oh, actually, this is a pretty good deal. I would buy all of them. Like I would rent them out to friends, like to other tourists, and then I would sell them when I leave.
That's awesome. You had your own little scooter Turo business going on in Thailand.
Yeah.
I think it was just great to have Codie on, just to get some motivation and get some ideas in there, because one thing I've realized, especially since being self-employed, is there's unlimited ways to make money. There's just so many ways, and there's so many jobs that people are just refusing to do, or they think they're too good for, or a lot of people are just content having a 9-to-5 normal job. And if you're a hustler and you want to get out there and make money, there's plenty of people that'll pay you to do all kinds of jobs.
Yeah, definitely. So I think it's cool. I think, in general, like the social media, taglines, it is what it is, right? Mm-hmm. Whether it's TikTok or Instagram, like you're going to read a headline and you're like, this sounds like spam, or this sounds like it's, some crazy thing. And on one hand, nothing is as easy, and completely passive as it sounds, especially in a 15-second video. But at the same time, like almost everything actually works. So I think it's a double-edged sword.
Yeah, totally. And to get around these algorithms, I mean, with YouTube and everything, to get these algorithms and get your video and content in front of people, you have to come out with something wild. Even if the title is just crazy and your content's not like that, it's part of the game that you kind of have to do stuff like that now.
Yeah, I hate it. I used to never spend time like doing these wild headlines. Like my title of the video would be like me eating my favorite foods, or like I go to dinner. Right?
Yep.
And then, or like I go to dinner in, Kiev, Ukraine or something. But then like they would just wouldn't get views, but then I'll change it to like best, food ever. I can't believe this was $5 or, whatever it is. And then it gets all the views.
Yeah. Like one of my favorite guys on YouTube is Graham Stephan, and he will, if you know his videos, he's not the most exciting guy ever, but he gets millions and millions of views. And he has headlines like why the stock market exploded today, or why Tesla stock will double in a year or something like that. It's just, it's part of the game and you have to do it. So it kind of sucks, but it's still good content. So don't get fooled if you see some crazy headlines. Like Codie's content is really cool. And you can find out more about her at Codie Sanchez. That's CodieSanchez. And I'll put the link in the notes on her special deal on contrarianthink.co. Pretty cool deal there too. If you put the code in, we'll put all that information in the show notes.
And by the way, Derek, you have an Instagram.
I do.
At Derek Radio. Is that from your Dixie Chick days?
Yeah, and I was on the radio. I was on like multiple radio stations, and I'm just too lazy to change it. Should I change it to Derek Podcast? No, actually, you know what happened?
Derek Radio is good.
I tried to use my actual name, which was my original Instagram name, just Derek Sparts, and I've been trying to change it back, and it won't let me. It says that this name is not available, but when you go to Instagram, there's no one with that name. So I can't get a hold of anybody to change it back. So I guess I've just been content with Derek Radio.
Derek Radio is fine. Yeah. And then if you guys want to follow Sam, it's but not I am, just Sam Marks. Think of it like missing the apostrophe or instant message Sam Marks. How about that? And I'm Johnny FDJ, ironically, because my other account got hacked a few months ago and I never got it back.
Yeah, we've had fun with Instagram between the two of us. Like we said earlier, though, Johnny mentioned it. Please share the show. That's all we're asking. If you got value out of this or any episode, feel free to share it with your friends. The show is free and it's going to stay free. We try to limit the ads as much as possible. And we just want to get the show out there. And I think we love to hear all the stories too about people who have found the show and then they binge it and they learned so much, or they took control of their finances. Maybe they had some financial advisors that were charging these high fees and they realized, I could do all this stuff myself. We'd love to hear all those stories. So please share it with a friend and helping your friends out and to do these things and become financially independent is what we're all about. So the more we can get to people, the more we really appreciate it.
Yeah, definitely. And this is an easy episode to share with your female friends or relatives, someone who, wants some kind of inspiration, or someone who wants like side hustles, someone who's kind of bored at their 9-to-5 job. So yeah, I think this is a good episode to share, get people in. So Derek, it's been fun hanging out with you, or virtual at least. I'm glad I'm not evacuating Kiev anytime soon to hang out in person, but I think I'll be here. Unless things change, but should be okay.
I'm knocking on wood for you that all does come to fruition and nothing happens. So I will talk to you next week, Johnny.
All right. See you, buddy.
Thanks for listening to the Invest Like a Boss podcast. Join our mailing list at investlikeaboss.com to get exclusive access to our insider investment folios and our private members forum.
If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe on iTunes or your favorite podcast app. Tell your friends and leave us a review in the iTunes store. It helps more than you know. See you guys next week.